And welcome everybody. So the lesson that we're going to do tonight contains information about creating and expanding a writing team in your chapter or group, why the teams are important, how to structure your team, how teams can contribute to chapter growth, suggestions for possible actions and questions to be discussed, and a list of resources that you can use and expand. So what is a writing team? So a writing team is a group of volunteers who get together on a regular basis to support one another, write, edit, and talk about writing possibilities and resources. So that's what a writing team is. So what's the purpose of a writing team? Well, the purpose is for volunteers to come together to share their mutual desire to write, to learn, educate, improve their skills, and brainstorm ideas for letters to the editor and op-eds. So why are writing teams important? So first of all, looking at outreach, published LTEs and op-eds are an opportunity to educate the public about CCL and carbon fee and dividend, and to also educate the public about the urgent need for action on climate change. Teams educate the newspaper's editorial staff about climate change and let them know the public is interested in reading news articles on the subject. And just to elaborate on that just a little bit, if a newspaper starts getting lots of letters about climate change and about solutions to it and everything, the editors are going to see that and they're going to run more stories on that topic. The newspapers are kind of in rough shape these days. And so when they get that kind of feedback from their readers that they're interested in a certain topic, they're going to respond and give them more of that. So then, another reason why writing teams are important is to work on skills. Writing team gatherings provide an opportunity to mentor and coach both budding and experienced writers to improve overall writing skills and create community within a chapter. And teams can choose to edit each other's letters and work on op-eds together. And then the other thing that's important about writing teams is strategy. So team members can strategize about how to get LTEs and op-eds published, how to incorporate monthly actions as they apply to letter writing, and also ways to use published LTEs and op-eds, including sending those to their congressional offices. So what are the suggestions now for structuring? How might you structure your writing team? So first of all, you want to meet in person. You can do this at a coffee shop or at a member's home, and just find a time that works for most of the people who want to participate. A good time could be the week after the monthly call meeting so that the monthly actions can be reviewed as they pertain to letter writing. Or chapters can use the second hour of the monthly call meeting as a letter writing meeting, if there is time. But I don't know if y'all's chapters are the same as ours here in Atlanta, where we never have enough time. There's always more things to do than there is time. But you can. It's also helpful to have a team leader who organizes the team, creates meeting agendas, keeps a list of interested volunteers, and sends out meeting notices. The team leader can provide support and congratulations to volunteers when their letters to the editor and op-eds get published. It's useful to have a volunteer editor or two to whom team members can send their drafts before submitting, should those writers want proofreading or editing assistance. And just a little bit more on that. Everybody needs an editor. I'm the communications director. I need an editor. I usually have somebody at least proof what I send out and sometimes edit as well. So editing is very important. Everybody needs an editor. So how do writing teams work to expand CCL chapters? A writing team gives new members an immediate, specific, and effective way to get involved, in addition to the monthly call meetings. So you have a new person, and they're good at writing. It's a great way to get them involved, because what we know about developing our chapters is that if people don't have something to do, they're going to move on. They're going to go away. But if you give them something interesting to do, that really turns them on, and that keeps them involved in your group. Writing teams can also tie in monthly actions with the letter writing. Meetings, the letter writing team meetings can provide an opportunity to socialize and build community. We're going to launch a writing team here in Atlanta. We're going to meet at the space where we usually hold our meetings, but it'll probably be an evening thing. We'll have some pizza and beer and everything. It'll be kind of a socializing time in addition to getting some work done. Members may be more likely to continue their CCL involvement when they join a team that aligns with their abilities. Oh, I just said that. But anyway, members have a stake in their chapter when they're given an opportunity to be involved in a specific way. So I can't overemphasize that. If you have somebody who's joining your group and they're all full of energy, give them something to do. Writing team is a great place for them to start. So if you're doing it, you're holding your meetings, what are the possible themes that you might have for discussion? So one of those might be your print media strategy. You can review the hierarchy of letter to the editor response opportunities on community, and I think we'll have a URL that's posted on the lesson here that'll take you to that, and you can review that. You can also strategize about editorial board meetings and relationships with newspaper staff, and how to make it easier to get published. If you meet with an editorial board, I guarantee it's going to be a whole lot easier to get op-eds published in your newspaper. How can we share letter writing opportunities with members of our team? So that's always a good topic for discussion. That when the LTE opportunities come up, how are we going to get those out to everybody so that we can get some letters submitted? And then another thing would be to talk about examples of articles in newspapers to which you can respond with an LTE or an op-ed. And I want to say one more thing about strategy, and that is what's great about letter writing teams, letter to the editor teams, is that if you have more than one person submitting a letter, like 3 or 4 letters, it dramatically improves the chances that one of those letters is going to get published. So even if your letter doesn't get published, if you're part of a team that submitted 4 letters, it's kind of like, yeah, the person who got the letter published, they got the points, they scored, they got the 2 points or the 3 points or whatever. But all the people who submitted letters get kind of an assist on that. They get an assist on the play because those letters improve the chances that their letter was going to get published. So another theme for discussion would be to talk about writing, the art and the craft of writing, grammar, punctuation, style, and writing techniques. You can talk about the structural components of letters to the editor and op-eds. In other words, what's the best formula, as it were, for an LTE. And again, we have there's a link that we'll have with the lesson that can kind of take you to what that particular formula is, and you can talk about that. How can we frame carbon fee and dividend facts and create a narrative for an audience that may not be receptive? And then another thing that you could talk about in writing would be overcoming writer's block and other writing challenges. So another theme that you might have for discussion would be leveraging your media. So why is it important to send published LTEs and op-eds to members of Congress? So that's a good topic of discussion. You could talk about the purpose of print media outreach and how to use letter writing to shape public opinion. And then also, what are the ways to extend the impact of published LTEs and op-eds through social media like Facebook and Twitter? How can you get more bang for your buck, as it were, after you get something published in the newspaper? Well, social media is a great way to extend your reach, as it were. So another theme for discussion might be education. So you can talk about the CCL basics, carbon fee and dividend, the Remy report, laser talks. In other words, you can have an evening kind of getting all of your team members well versed and up to speed on the main things that we want to get across as CCL members. Another thing under the education theme would be to talk about CCL values expressed through our writing, and those values, as we know, are respect, appreciation, and gratitude. And by the way, we just I don't know if everybody's aware of this, but we recently posted our values on the main website. Ricky, how do people find that on our website? Can you tell us how they find that on the main site there?
Yeah, I'll tell you what I'll do. See, why don't when we get to the Q&A section, why don't I demonstrate how folks can find the news hierarchy, the letter to the editor formula, and I'll demonstrate where to find the values as well. I'll just show them a demo on screen.
Excellent. That's great. That's great. Okay, super. So and then another thing on the education theme would be the do's and don'ts of submission, such as going past the word limits. You definitely want to double check your facts. Nothing looks worse than sending in a letter or an op-ed and not having accurate information. We don't want to put in fake news when it comes to this, because our credibility is on the line when we get our facts wrong. And then we also want to avoid vitriol and negativity. We're the group that accentuates the positive. And then, one final theme that you might have for discussion would be outreach. How do you use published media for outreach? Can you use letter writing to expand your chapter's membership? And if a team if they've been writing to one newspaper and wants to expand its reach, you can talk about how to submit to other publications. And you can also look at the possibilities, the possible impacts and benefits of mentioning key legislators in your LTEs, because nothing gets the attention of a member of Congress than having their name appear in the media. I guarantee you they have a staffer who, that's their job every day, is to Google their boss's name, do a Google News search on their boss's name and see where they're showing up. So it's always a good idea to get your senators and your representatives mentioned. Obviously we're going to send that media to those offices, but it's really kind of a plus if they see it before we send it to them. So then moving on here, in addition to discussions, some of the actions that you can take at team meetings, you can celebrate your team's successes and discuss challenges. You can create and review drafts of letters to the editor and op-eds. You can give positive feedback on drafts and provide encouragement and mentoring. You can strategize about how to write on a topic that isn't being covered in the local media. That's a pretty common problem. If you have a newspaper that is sort of ignoring the climate issue altogether, how do you get break into the news cycle when they're not talking about climate change? And there are ways to do that. You can write letters to members of Congress as a group. You can develop fact-based talking points for members and to use when drafting letters to the editor and op-eds. And you can develop a writing resource list for researching content. And some of those resources might include things like, let's talk climate, messages to motivate Americans. There's the Yale Climate Opinion Maps. National Geographic is a great resource. Skeptical Science is a wonderful resource as well, and of course CCL Community. If you go to the resources page on Community and click Print Media, there's a ton of resources there as well. So, one thing I neglected to mention is communication within the group, and you want to many chapters use an online communications platform to notify their volunteers about letter writing opportunities and meetings. So you could do that through Yahoo or Google email groups or something like that. But it's important to set up some kind of method of communicating with each other, and providing links to newspaper articles of interest can be included, and volunteers can be recognized for having their LTEs and op-eds published. I know here in Atlanta, as soon as a letter to the editor gets published in a newspaper, we send that out on our list and congratulate the person who got the letter written and all that. So I'm going to stop right here. That's all I've got for this section here. We're going to open it up for Q&A and possible sharing too. Yeah.
Yeah. So why don't I let you catch your breath for a moment, Steve, and Sandy, I'll make sure if you'll make sure your line is unmuted. Yep. I got you unmuted. There you go. So right now what we want to hear is we'd like to have some folks who have questions about setting up these writing teams, any of the material or content that Steve just went through. If you have questions about that, you can unmute yourself by clicking the little microphone icon in the lower left portion of your screen. And if you're on the phone, you press *6 to mute and unmute yourself. And when you do, tell us the name of your name and the city that you're joining from before you ask your question or give your comment. Well, I've got a question for some of the folks who are already doing this, if that's okay.
Go right ahead. Yeah,
I think it was Karen and Michael and Sandy, some of the people who are doing this locally. What do you think is the best way to determine one's level of interest and maybe even their skill level and like what they might need help with?
Yes, so we actually do have, our meetings are separate from the monthly meeting. So we have a 2-hour meeting after the monthly meeting, and we give people a lot of direction, education on how to write, what the hooks are for our local situation. And then we also have people send their articles. We have 3 people who edit the articles, and we do that during the month and at the meeting. I think the meeting is a great place. It just feels like we get connected with each other, and that really generates a lot of positive feedback when a letter gets published. So, and we've also been using the Eco America language. And having used that Eco America language has helped us a lot. So even just switching from talking about climate change, and people kind of scratch their head about what that is, and using words like damage to the climate, that just seems more concrete, and we seem to get better understanding and better feedback in using the words that Eco America has provided and substituted. Yeah, I mean, there are people that have joined the meeting that don't have great writing skills, but I think we've really helped them a lot. And Yeah, I think that meeting is really important.
All right, thank you, Karen. And so for folks who are maybe wondering what exactly Karen's talking about with Eco-America, if you're looking at the screen right now, this is the name of that PDF or that report
Yep.
that they put together. The very first thing is Let's Talk Climate, Messages to Motivate Americans. And so if you're on the phone, again, it's Let's Talk Climate, Messages to Motivate Americans. And you're right, they've done a ton of research. Thanks for pointing to that, Karen. Michael, did you have anything you wanted to add from your experience to share with the group? Yeah, I think you're muted, Mike. Let me unmute you. Hang on one second. You are now unmuted. Go ahead, Mike.
Okay. Specifically to what? You covered a lot of topics tonight.
Just your experience with creating a writing team locally and what your experience has been with them.
Well, our experience is that we have no trouble getting people to join the team. But once they're members of the team, I've been experiencing kind of a blockage, especially amongst the first timers. We'll have a meeting and everybody will be enthused. For April, we got commitments from 9 people to write something by the end of April. But so far, we haven't heard too many speak up. I've been putting out LTE ops every day. So my main issue right now is learning how to coax somebody out of their safe place and give it a try.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is Steve. I have a question for both Mike and Karen. So in terms of drafting op-eds and so forth, do either of you, does your group, does the person who's writing the op-ed maybe share it with the members of the writing team ahead of the meeting, so that they can kind of look at it, and then when you get to the meeting, you can give them feedback on the on their op-ed?
Yeah, we do both. Sometimes we get the article before the meeting, and sometimes we don't.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, it happens both ways, and sometimes you don't bring.
This is John in Melbourne, Florida, and I've got a specific question. For chapters that are in a congressional district represented by a far-right congressman,
Mm-hmm.
as is the case with us, and you want to bring the congressman's name into the letter or into the op-ed.
Mm-hmm.
The question I have is how to do that without having a congressman feel that you're coming after him, like you're trying to box him in or embarrass him.
Right. So I would just say avoid bringing up, obviously there's probably going to be some stuff he's voted on or said in the past that you don't agree with. Don't bring up that stuff in an op-ed or a letter to the editor. Just keep it simple, almost like you're making a request to the congressman, Congressman Smith, I'm hoping Congressman Smith will consider joining the Climate Solutions Caucus, or maybe I'm hoping that Congressman Smith will consider signing on to the Republican climate resolution or something like that. But yeah, I don't think you're going to piss off anybody by just making a request. I would just avoid calling them out on stuff, because that just doesn't get you anywhere. It's the same thing as if you're meeting with them face to face. If all you're going to do is carp about what you don't like about what they did or said, you're not going to get anywhere. But I think it's perfectly fine to just say, hey, I'd like you to do this. Yeah.
I have one thought, and that is, do you know of anything that you could thank him or show gratitude for that he's done? Because starting off a letter that way And then going into your ask might be another way to approach it.
Yeah, there are a couple of significant things that we can use. We're situated on an estuary. The National Estuary Program is, very important to funding the restoration of the Indian River Lagoon.
Mm-hmm.
And the congressman has been very helpful in keeping that funding going at the national level. So
There
it's
you go.
perfect opportunity.
Okay,
Great.
Ricky, I'm looking at the chat here, and Ellen from Chicago is saying, I'm a pretty good writer, but new to CCL. Biggest writing block for me is identifying the most appropriate context or hook for an op-ed. LTs are a little easier because they're usually in response to something in the paper, right? I think for an op-ed, pretty much the same rule applies to an op-ed as an LTE. You want to be topical. You want to be looking at, what's in the news, what is everybody talking about, and then find a way. Okay, so if this is the big story that's in the news right now, how do I tie that into the climate issue? So there's, there's a lot of big things that, like when the State of the Union address comes around each year, that's a huge news story. And you can kind of focus in on what was said or what wasn't said about climate change on that. Of course, Earth Day coming up next week. That's always an opportunity to do something. But I would say, whatever is happening in the news, somehow or another, you want to find a way to riff on that and bring it around to the climate issue. And sometimes, the climate issue itself is taking front and center in the news. It certainly was when Scott Pruitt was getting confirmed as the EPA chief, and then of course when Trump signed his executive order to start the process of dismantling the Clean Power Plan. So I would say, yeah, your op-eds, just look at what's in the news and figure out a way to bring that conversation that's already out there around to what we're talking about.
Steve, may I add to that? Well, can I just? I'm sorry, just real quick. Let me just add to that as well. Ellen, if you're looking for tips, there's the On Community, and I'll demonstrate that in just a minute. There's this, the Print Media Action Team. So I would suggest joining that, and there'll be folks in there who can give you ideas as well, and you guys can continue the conversation and keep going. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Someone else had a question.
I just wanted to go back to motivating the members of your writing group.
Yes.
So one thing that we do in our writing group is our editor has a list of hooks that we could use, and we go down that list of hooks, and then people volunteer to write about that particular hook. The other thing that I think that really helps is if we keep our articles local, and so if I'm particularly passionate about the Great Salt Lake and the climate things that are happening there. So it's a lot easier for me to write about that because I know about it, I'm passionate about it, and I'm more motivated because it's something that's local in my community. So yeah, I think people tend to write and follow through on their writing if we're talking about something that's happening in our own backyard.
Hey, Karen or Steve or Sandy, describe or explain what a hook is for those of us who might not know exactly what you mean by that.
Right. So the hook is the thing that's happening in the news that is the reason for responding for writing to the newspaper. That's what a hook is, essentially. Karen, did you want to add anything to that?
I think that it's kind of the first few sentences that people read those first few sentences and say, wow, I'm interested in that. I'm excited about that. I really want to read the rest of the article.
Gotcha. Perfect. And there was a question in the chat too. What is an LTE? And I realize at times we speak in these three-letter acronyms, and we apologize for that. LTE is a letter to the editor, and op-eds or the opinion editorials that you'll see in the opinion pages of the newspaper as well. So if we're ever speaking in three-letter acronyms, please call us out on that. That's not to do. So we appreciate that.
God, that's a pet peeve of mine in emails. You know, when people start throwing acronyms around, I have no idea what the heck they're talking about. It drives me nuts.
Yeah. So it's a good reminder for all of us all the time, so appreciate that.
Yeah.
Sandy, while I'm going to demonstrate to folks where to find the Print Media Action Team and some of those resources, while I'm doing that, will you talk a little bit about the Print Media Action Team and the purpose that you guys have for that, and how it can also, you know, help this process with the writing teams?
Well, Steve and I started the Print Media Action Team as a way to support writers. It's really that simple, and it's really that complex. So what we try to do is have monthly support calls on different topics, such as writing letters to the editor, writing op-eds, writing press releases is coming up, going to editorial board meetings, things that relate to print, specifically to print media. And we also spotlight an outstanding letter to the editor and an op-ed every week. Steve posts letter writing opportunities when they come up on a national level, things that you might see in your local papers. And then people post questions and we answer them. It's right now we have, I think as of today, was 101 members in our team, and we're hoping everybody on this call will join. And we hope that we'll have a lot more participation, because letter writing is a huge part of how we get our message across. And also letter writing teams is one way that we cultivate that.
Perfect. Anything you want to add to that, Steve?
Nope, that's good for me.
All right.
I have one question. Mike, are you still on the call, Mike Seeger?
Yes, I am.
How do you find letter writing opportunities all over the United States? Because you have written prolifically all over the United States and gotten published, and I want to know how you do it.
Well, you know, good old Google search. If you know how to make that thing work. I worked for a search engine company for 11 years, so that's familiar territory for me, but not for everybody else. Mm-hmm. It is possible on Google search to do complex search terms where you can combine them in certain ways and filter them and automate them, actually. So I've done a combination of that. Google gives you the opportunity to narrow your search to just news articles. It allows you to look for two different terms, for example, like climate change and California is one of my my daily alerts. You can look for articles that have the phrase climate change and California in them, and to see all the news stories that have those two combinations often gives me what I need. But you can go, and it can get fairly complicated. You can do more than two combinations. To give you an example, I wrote a letter today to the Orlando Sentinel, and let's say the letter opportunity came to me by searching on drought and climate change, and it took me to this Florida newspaper, which I've been wanting to get to, and I decided I didn't know enough about Florida to put something meaningful in a hook. In other words, that would talk to Floridians. So I did another search, and I looked for climate change and Florida, and said, show me everything for the last week. And I came up with a story about Senator Nelson there, who had held a Senate committee down in Palm Beach, right next to Mar-a-Lago, to make a point, and I was able to add that to the letter. So the idea is you can use Google fairly creatively to find things outside your area.
So you set up Google Alerts with various search words. Is that what you're saying?
That's right. You can either do them in real time yourself. You can just do them as they occur to you. When you find one that's especially productive, you can hit a little button that's right there on the screen at the bottom of the search results. It says Create Alert, and it will then send that search. It'll do that search once a day and send the results to your email, your Google account.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to mention one resource that for me is just essential. I use it quite a bit to find things to tweet and so forth. But Climate Nexus, each morning at 8 o'clock in the morning, Climate Nexus will send out what's called their Hot News Digest. And it's an email that they send out every day, and at the top it has the top stories of the day and multiple outlets that are writing about it, and then they'll get into more news stories underneath that, and then they have another category that's opinion pieces, including editorials, op-eds, online blogs, and that kind of thing. So it's a great resource if you're looking for things that you might respond to with letters to the editor. It's a really wonderful news source. It's go to Climate Nexus, and at the bottom of their page, they've got a thing where you can sign up for their Hot News Digest. It's really worthwhile.
Great. Let me, real quick, Steve, there's a comment from Jan in the chat. If you'll cue that up and get ready to read that. And what I'm going to do real quick, I'm going to show folks where to find those resources that we talked about real quick. Mm-hmm. So for the print media action team, at the very top of any page on CCL Community, and here's the web URL for Community. It's just a subdomain of our main website. So it's community.citizenscommentlobby.org. And when you go there, you'll see the very top menu bar, there is an Action Teams link. And when you click on it and you're participating in a video conference, it's very slow. So there we go, just a second. If you'll scroll down, you'll see there's a directory. And here's all the different types of action teams we have with CCL. And these are groups that are just working on specific topics. And you'll see the one here for print media. So you would just click to go there. And then you'll find a bunch of folks who are interested in the same topic as you are. And it's just like a Facebook group. You can post, and you've got members. There's over 100 members of that group. So lots of folks to share ideas with. A couple of other things we talked about, some resources. So if you'll click on the resources menu item at the top, and when that loads, slowly, on the left-hand side, you'll see there is a sub-menu bar or a sub-menu here. Click on Media Resources, and then you can see here, letters to the editor. There's examples in there for you. There's tools to help you submit your letter to the editor. And then if we go to the training, this is where we're talking about the letter to the editor hierarchy. It's loading. You can see here there's how to write a letter to the editor. This is the letter to the editor formula that Steve mentioned, and also what to respond to in the newspaper. So these are two important things that will help guide you finding that hook that we were talking about, what to respond to, and then how to, Steve was worked with the Atlanta Journal-Constitution for a long time. And he understands that there is a little bit of a formula to writing a letter to the editor. And so he's done a separate lesson on that. So those are two other great resources. And then the last thing, Steve, before you read that comment, you asked me to show everyone where to find the values that we posted on our main website.
Uh-huh.
So this is our main website, as you can see in the address bar, citizensclimatellobby.org. And then on the About, if you click on the About menu item and the sub-menu that pops up, in my bars, there we go, you'll see there's an option there for core values. And so I think it was John that was bringing up, how do we write a letter that's not seeming to be confrontational or calling somebody out for their position. And what I like to always do if I get in a rut like that or something like that, what I'm finding myself to do is go back to our vision. And now that we have our values listed here, I think it's a great place to get started and think, okay, so how can I do that? And just go back and reflect on the values, I think helps that out a little bit. So Steve, do you want to read that comment from Ellen?
Sure. You mean from Jan?
Oh, Jan, I'm sorry. Yes.
Right. Yeah. So Jan over in the Bay Area, was saying that they have 3 folks who review 2 local papers. I'm assuming it's the Chronicle and it's also the East Bay Times, and they forward the relevant articles by email to their writing group. Just thinking they probably have about 10 people who are in that group, and each of them will try to submit an LTE that's linked to the article or op-ed that was shared. And she says that she manages to send about 2 or 3 letters a week, and she's already gotten 3 LTEs published since she started with CCL in January. And those LTE leaders, they also send congratulations and recognitions by email to the writers group. So this is all done online. They're not. They don't meet, but they do have a group, and they kind of communicate apparently by email. One of their members even got a letter to the editor in the New York Times last month, and so anyway, it's. They're doing a lot of the things in the Bay Area that we talked about this evening with the group. Without the benefit of having a meeting, I mean, I like the idea of doing meetings. If nothing else, it kind of strengthens the bond that you might have with your team, and it creates more community as it were. Meeting in person is just a good idea. I think we see that with our monthly chapter meetings. The groups that do meet regularly are the ones that thrive. If you don't meet, you're not going to thrive. That's just the simple facts of life about that. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Steve. So again, we got time for questions, and we have time for more sharing. So if you have a question, you can press *6 if you're on the phone to unmute your line. If you're online, press the little microphone symbol next to in the lower left-hand portion of your screen, and tell us your name and the city you're joining from. It looks like Denny is thinking of a question. I have one other thing that I'll share, Steve, and Sandy, and you guys can tell us if you've seen other groups do this as well. So in the DFW area, obviously we have several chapters, and we tried something right around election time, and where we knew a big event was about to happen, obviously the election, very similar to like maybe when the Pope was coming to the U.S., and we actually took turns. So there was nothing specifically in the paper about climate change, but it was about the election. And so one week we had one team send in all the letters they could about the election and climate change, and we rotated from group to group in the DFW area. And we actually found that was pretty effective, and it didn't force people to respond immediately to a letter to the editor. So, to a story or an op-ed. And so it didn't require that sense of urgency out of it, and it allowed them a little more time to plan. Have you seen that be an effective strategy as well across the country, or seen any type of variations of that?
Well, I know in Texas, for instance, a lot of several chapters might have one newspaper, like the Houston Chronicle or something. And so it would be good to have some kind of inter-chapter strategy among letter writing teams about how they're going to respond to stories, or how they're going to encourage the newspaper to post stories. That's on a slightly higher level than our discussion tonight, but is also something worth considering. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I think so. It's an interplay of all the different chapters in a metro area. Maybe that's part of the strategy discussions for letter writing teams, is how to coordinate those efforts.
Yeah. I mean, I think that most smaller towns, have one newspaper and maybe a weekly. So it's a little bit more cut and dry than when you have a bunch of chapters all sort of congregating around one newspaper. That would be a little bit challenging, I would think, to figure out, but might open up some possibilities as well, especially when it comes to meeting with the editorial board.
Right. Right. Well, we still have about 12 minutes for questions or any other thoughts or suggestions from folks. Again, *6 if you're on the phone, or click the microphone symbol next to your name or to your on the lower left-hand portion of your screen.
Ricky, if people have questions after the class that they would like to send to us, would you, do you have a way to put up Steve and my email addresses so that they can respond to things after the fact? I know that there are going to be some people who couldn't make it tonight. I've been receiving emails today, and they may want to get in touch with us later on.
Yeah. Or Sandy, they can join the Print Media Action Team and they can post the question in our forum.
Yes, that's another way to do it. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
We would encourage that.
Yeah, that way everyone gets the benefit of the answer too. I love that idea.
Yeah, yeah. But if they want to do it privately, then it would be good if they had our email address.
And Sandy, do you want to give me your email real quick, and I'll put it in the chat?
Sure. Sandy, SANDY .Simon, SIMON at citizensclimatelobby.org.
Alrighty, there we go. There's Sandy's. And Steve, yours is just steve.volk, right, at Citizens Climate Lobby?
Actually, it's even simpler than that. It's steve at citizensclimate.org.
Okay. Awesome. Got those in there for you. Okay, so I got about 10 minutes, but if there aren't any other questions, just let me know.
Are there two more chats? I'm seeing a number 4 in the chat box.
Well, that's because he just put our email addresses in chat. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, got it.
Yeah. One thing that I will add, I think could be really useful with a writing team, and that is if you live in an area where you're the kind of like the only chapter or one of just a few chapters in your state, and there's a lot of areas in your state where you don't have groups or it's not being covered, you can start talking about, okay, how do we, for instance in Atlanta here, we could talk about, okay, well, we don't have a group at Savannah, how can we get some more letters to the editor in the Savannah Morning News or in the Columbus paper or the Macon paper, because the more you get published throughout your state, the more leverage you're going to have in terms of generating political will with your senators. If all they're seeing is, letters from one particular city in their state, yeah, it does carry some weight. But if they're seeing stuff in newspapers throughout the whole state, then that sort of takes it to another level for them in terms of, is this something that I need to, pay attention to?
Steve, I wonder if you could elaborate on that. The reason I'm asking is that in Florida, there are a growing number of chapters, but the East Coast is really underrepresented. Mm-hmm. And the chapter we have in Melbourne for Brevard County really is at the intersection of maybe 3, possibly 4 media markets. We've mm-hmm. got Florida Today, which is the main Gannett paper to service this market. But, the Orlando Sentinel comes in, the mm-hmm. Palm Beach Post comes in, and even from across the state, you get the Tampa Bay Times and so forth. A lot of people read that here. Mm-hmm. So, the question is how to, maximize the opportunity that represents with the resources that we have in our local chapter.
Right. So the first thing that needs to happen is you have to figure out a way to monitor what's in those newspapers. So if you have several people in your group, a lot of times you can get an electronic subscription to a newspaper pretty cheaply. Obviously the electronic subscriptions are a lot less than the home delivery subscription. Right. So if you can have each person subscribe to electronically to a newspaper, and then when I say electronic subscription, what that means is that you will get an electronic version of the actual print newspaper. So it's one thing to look on the website for and see what's what stories they've got on the website. Stories they have on their website may not be what's in the print paper, and you have to respond to the things that are in the print paper. So that would be the first thing is just okay, which are the newspapers that you want to target, and see how see if you can assign a paper to each of the members of your team, and then when the opportunities arise to respond to something in those papers, you can send those to your team, and you'll start getting stuff published in there. I mean, Judy Weiss up in Massachusetts, of course, she's legendary. She gets well over 100 letters to the editor published every year, and they're not all going in the Boston Globe. They're going in newspapers all around the country because she's monitoring. She probably does it through Google News alerts and stuff like that. But if you're interested in targeting the Florida papers, I would say first thing to do is to assign each paper to somebody so that you can monitor and I guarantee there's going to be at least one opportunity a week that you'll be able to find in each of those papers.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Steve, I just put in the chat, and this is an important point. We spoke with our editor here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and he said just exactly what you were saying, just to reiterate that they will not post letters to the editor and responses to stories that are on the web only. It has to be in the paper.
Right. And that's why subscribing to an electronic version of the print paper is so important. Right. Exactly.
Absolutely.
Could I just make a comment real quickly before we have to close?
Sure.
And that is that with print media, you're always learning, which is pretty exciting. For instance, the other day I was thinking about submitting a letter to the editor to more than one newspaper, the same letter to the editor to more than one newspaper at the same time. And I thought that maybe that would be breaking copyright laws. So I called our local newspaper and I said, how do you feel about people doing that? And she said, oh, we encourage people to share their media around. So little did I know that you have to call and ask what their policy is, because some of them will say, no, you can't do that. Whereas others will say, oh, it's fine with us. So there's always stuff to be learning with print media, and that's one of the exciting parts to it.
Right. If you write something, it gets published in a newspaper. If the newspaper didn't pay you, they don't own it. It's that's your letter. That's you can share it with whoever you want to.
Right.
Exactly.
So it's possible you can submit the same letter around, and if it gets published 5 times, you get to send in 5 field reports. So pretty exciting stuff.
It's all about the field reports.
Right? It's all about the field report.
Right, yeah.
And if anyone doesn't know what the field report is, just let you know, that's when you get a letter that are published, maybe your group leader or someone in your group will submit a report to CCL letting us know so we can catalog and collect all the data. So that's what a field report would be. Great. Any other questions or comments? Speak now, or Steve's going to be in complete darkness in about 2 minutes.
I'm going to what, Ricky?
You're going to be in complete darkness in about 2 minutes. It's getting darker. And
No. The only illumination that's on me right now is my porch light. It's now night has fallen here in Atlanta now.
All right.
Well, I think the print media action team is going to be talking about press releases on its May support call. So I'm just going to put out a little teaser on that. And we hope that everybody on this call will join the print media action team and come and listen to our calls. Steve does them. They're very informative, and you'll learn a lot.
Yeah, and just one thing about the press releases. We've got a conference coming up. Most of you will probably be sending people to Washington. It's a great opportunity to send a notice to your local paper. You can do an advisory and give them a heads up that your group is sending volunteer advocates to Washington to lobby on climate change. And there's a good chance then once you send that in, that the newspaper might contact you and say, hey, we'd like to talk to you a little bit more about that. And you might end up generating a story about your group because of that.
Steve, we got one last question, and you got about a minute, or Sandy, to answer it, either one of you.
Okay.
Michael asked, sorry not asking sooner, any tips on special press opportunities this month, seeing as Earth Day is approaching?
Oh gosh, I mean, obviously, letters to the editor. I would send, Earth Day themed letters to the editor probably this Monday, and because if you mention Earth Day, then they will try to actually publish the letter, on Earth Day. So the letters to the editor, kind of a slam dunk. We did send out an op-ed from Mark that is geared to Earth Day. If you didn't get that, let me know, and you can I can send that to you, and you can submit it to your newspaper, or you could write your own. It's not too late to draft an op-ed over the weekend about Earth Day. You can use some of the talking points that are in our latest media packet, which is available on our main website. There's a media resources on our main website, and I think the media packet for Earth Day is downloadable there too. So those are the main things with Earth Day coming up. Is letters to the editor. You can submit Mark's op-ed, or you can draft your own op-ed. Yeah.
Or viewpoint or commentary, and don't be afraid to submit it to the big guys. The Huffington Post. We just got an op-ed published in the Huffington Post. So there's lots of opportunity for people to make contributions of columns, especially about Earth Day now. And I would suggest you submit them right away because there's not much time before Earth Day.
Great. Well, thanks, Steve. Thank you, Sandy. Thank you, everyone, for joining tonight. Karen, Michael, for your feedback and your input on what's been successful and what's been challenging in your area, because it's also always good to talk about the good and the bad, so we can hopefully strategize, as Sandy would say, to overcome those things within our writing team. So thank you so much. Again, everyone, please join the Print Media Action Team where you can carry on this conversation. And we'll talk to you next week. We have on Citizen Climate University motivational interviewing for citizen lobbyists. So Dr. Dave Christian is going to, it's a 90-minute lesson next week. First time we've ever done that, but it's really going to be important. It's a sort of a kickoff for our lobbying series as we get prepared for June, and applying the techniques of motivational interviewing and how to do that within the context of our lobbying. So hopefully everyone will join that next week as well. Other than that, you guys have a great evening, and we'll talk to you next Thursday. Good night, everyone.
Thanks.
Good night.
Bye.
Thank you.